Dante's Divine Comedy, Inferno, Canto the 16th.
Dante and Virgil were walking along the boiling river of blood along that ledge, and they kind of had a sidebar with Sir Brunetto, and they couldn't stop because otherwise he'd have to stay still and let the burning rain hit him for 100 years or something like that. And then they moved on.
So they've walked along the ledge now for so long that they can hear the river falling off into a waterfall. When they are approached by 3 more souls who recognize by his clothing that he's a Florentine. So they're like, hey, we know what city you're from. We're from the same city. Getting back into your point of him constantly running into people from the exact city he was born in. Dante is moved by all of the wounds and the burns that they have on them. He describes it like it hurts him to see them in so much pain, which is one of these things that Virgil will slowly work on, like beating out of him. Virgil is constantly expressing the fact that you should not be feeling pity for people who are in hell. The men walk up, and you'll remember that when he was walking with Sir Brunetto, they walked side by side for a while because they couldn't stand still. Now they're getting to the point where they can't keep walking forward. So what these men do in order to talk to him but not stand still is they all start walking in a circle. That way they're still walking, but they're not, going anywhere specific, so they can talk to Dante without Dante having to walk anywhere. They announce who they are, and basically one of them is a very prestigious leader, and 2 of them are knights. The simplified version is these are the politicians that Dante was asking about earlier. When he was asking that one guy, like, hey, there's some politicians I like. Are they in heaven or somewhere in hell? And he's like, oh, they're further down. This is them here. So Dante knows them, and he actually has so much love for these people. He didn't know them personally, but, he loves what they stood for, what they did, the kinds of characters they were. So here's what Dante says when he learns who these 3 people are. I would have thrown myself to the plain below had I been sheltered from the falling fire, and I think my teacher would have let me go. But seeing I should be burned and cooked, my fear overcame the first impulse of my heart to leap down and embrace them then and there. So he wants to jump down and, embrace them and hug them and, give them handshakes and, be real close to them. And he can't because his feet would be burned. He'd have fire rained on him from above. But he has, this strong impulse to go down. You can tell he's huge fans of these guys.
See, I don't know that I feel that strongly about most politicians
these
days.
I think Florentine politicians must have been built different.
They must have been because... I just kind of assume that most politicians have a special place in hell these days.
Well, here they are. Then again, I wouldn't do that for any politician. But many politicians do have people who would do that for them.
That is very true. That is very true.
So maybe Dante's just one of these very polarized political people.
That's very true. And I guess I don't know how Italian politics worked back then, so maybe that was more common.
There was a lot of war involved.
Fair
Thankfully,
point,
there isn't in America at the moment.
At the moment.
They ask him a little bit about Florence. Because they're from Florence, they're interested. They were politicians, so they're kind of interested in, hey, how's it going up there? They talk about how someone just came from Florence recently. That someone, came down to the same level because he died and he came on here. And he's like, we were talking to him and it wasn't sounding too good. You were there recently. What do you have to say? And the way it basically works is Dante doesn't answer the question, but he says something kind of sad. And they can tell by the look on his face, yeah, it's not good. It's not good, is it? So they kind of have a moment where they're just kind of sad about Florence because they're all very passionate about making it a good place. Make Florence great again.
Maffa. Oh, wait,
no. It'd be Mufka.
Mufka. A Mufka hat.
Oh, goodness. It'd be a white hat instead of a red one, of course.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
I'll have to cut that because the context for that isn't in this recording.
Yeah.
They talk a little bit. The 3 guys move on. They continue onwards to a point where the roar of the waterfall is enormous, and it's pouring down into this huge pit. It's not clear how they're going to get down.
The elevator, duh.
Oh, yeah, they look to the right, and there's an elevator. Virgil reaches out his hand and asks Dante for his belt. Dante takes off his belt, and he hands it to Virgil, and Virgil tosses it down into the pit. A moment passes, and Dante's a little bit confused at first, but he's like, Virgil's a pretty good guide, so I'm sure he knows what he's doing. Okay. He then proceeds to describe a massive shape rising up within the shadows and the fog inside the pit, and this figure starts to come up, and that's when it cuts off. Right before describing whatever this massive thing rising out from the pit is. I love this. This is another cliffhanger.
Dante, you did it again. Man mastered the whole cinematic cliffhanger before it was a thing. Wow.
Before cinema. But that is the end of Canto the 16th.